بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى في كتاب أصول من علم الأصول by the Shaykh Salih Uthaymeen رحمه الله تعالى. The Shaykh, he says, Usul al-Fiqh, the definition of Usul al-Fiqh is understood in two ways. Firstly, with regards to the first component, Usul, and the second, Fiqh. Usul is the plural of the word Asl, and it means whatever can have something else built upon it. From that, we have the Asl, the foundation of a wall, which is, in essence, its base. Likewise, the foundation of a tree, which has many branches sprouting from it. As Allah the Most High says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alam tara kayfa daraba Allahu mathalan ككلمة طيبة كشجرة طيبة أصلها ثابت وفرعها في السماء. Have you not considered how Allah presents an example, making a good word like a good tree, whose root is firmly fixed and its branches high in the sky? Fiqh linguistically means understanding, as is the case in the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِّن لِسَانِي وَافْقَهُ قَوْلِي, and untie the knot from my tongue so that they may understand my speech. And its use in the science of jurisprudence is knowledge of the rulings of the Sharia along with their specific evidences. The meaning of the word ma'rifah is knowledge and conjecture. Because rulings of fiqh can be perceived with certainty or speculation, as is the case in many issues of fiqh, the meaning of the words legal rulings, ahkam ash-shari'ah, is rulings derived from the legislation, such as the obligatory or prohibitive nature of something. So from this is excluded rulings based on intellect, such as the knowledge that the whole of something is always bigger than any individual part. Also, general rulings like rain falling during a clear wintry night. The meaning of the word process, al-amaliyah, is whatever is not connected to beliefs, such as the prayer and zakat. So from this we can exclude all those things which are connected with beliefs, such as tawheed and knowing the names and attributes of Allah. So none of these things are called fiqh in jurisprudence. The meaning of the words specific evidences, adilla at-tafsiliyah, is evidences of fiqh that are coupled with detailed matters of fiqh. So from this definition, we can exclude usul al-fiqh itself, because its scope is limited to general evidences of fiqh. Secondly, with regard to it being a label for this particular science, then it is defined as a knowledge where the evidences of fiqh are determined in general and how they are to be benefited from and the condition of the beneficiary. The meaning of the word generality, al-ijmaliyah, is general rules such as the saying commanding indicates obligation and forbidding indicates prohibition. And from health requires, and good health requires, that whatever has to be implemented be implemented. So from this definition, we can exclude specific evidences, as they are not mentioned in usul al-fiqh except by way of giving an example for the rule. The meaning of the words and how to make full use of them, وَكَيْفِيَاتُ الْإِسْتِفَادَةُ مِنْهَا, is knowledge of how to allow the rulings to make full use of the evidences by studying the words and their implications, distinguishing the general from the specific, the restricted from the unrestricted, and the abrogated from the abrogating, and other than that. So by virtue of this, of his insight, the faqih can benefit from the evidences of fiqh and the rulings. The meaning of the words condition of the beneficiary, Hal al-Mustafid, if the beneficiary is a mujtahid, then he is named as such due to his benefiting from the evidences because he has reached the level of a mujtahid. So knowledge of the mujtahid and the conditions of ijtihad and its rulings return to usul al-fiqh. The benefits of jurisprudence. Usul al-fiqh is a noble science of the utmost importance, immensely rewarding, by which one is able to obtain a capacity to extract legal rulings from evidences on a sound footing. The first person to make this an independent science was Imam Ash-Shafi'i, Muhammad ibn Idris. Then many other scholars followed him in that and authored many books, which ranged from prose, poetry, and brief and long volumes until it became an entity in its own right with discernible features. Rulings, ahkam. Al-ahkam, rulings, is the plural of hukm and linguistically means a judgment, which has been necessitated by the speech of the legislator relating to the actions those burdened with carrying out the obligations of the legislation, al-mukallifin, are mandated either by request or choice or state. The intent behind our saying the speech of the legislator is the Quran and the Sunnah. The meaning of our words relating to the actions of those burdened with carrying out the obligations of the legislation is what is connected to actions, whether in word or deed, to do something or leave it. So this excludes whatever is associated with belief. So it is not called a ruling with regards to this terminology. The meaning of our statement, al-mukallifin, is whoever is included by the process of being burdened to fulfill the obligations of the legislation, which excludes the young and the insane. The meaning of our statement, mandated, talab, is commands and prohibitions, whether it be by way of obligation or preference. The meaning of the word choice, takhyir, is in whatever is permissible, and what is meant by our word state, wad, is what is correct or otherwise as dictated by the legislator through signs or descriptions, which are to be implemented or canceled. The types of rulings in the Sharia. The types of commands in the Sharia fall into two categories, taklifiyya and wada'iyya. The taklifiyya are 5, wajib, obligatory, mandub, encouraged to undertake, muharram, prohibited, makruh, disliked, and mubah, permissible. Firstly, wajib, linguistically means what has fallen or what is compulsory. Technically, it means what the legislator has ordered as a matter of obligation, like the 5 daily prayers. So excluded from our statement, what the legislator has ordered is what is forbidden, disliked, and permissible. And also excluded from the statement, by way of obligation, is that which is only encouraged, mandub. Therefore, something wajib is that which, if carried out, will bring reward for the one carrying it out, and the one that fails to do so deserves to be punished. It is also called fard, farida, hatam, and lazim. Secondly, mandub, linguistically means something or someone appointed or designated. Technically, it means what the legislator has ordered, but not by way of obligation, recommended, such as supererogatory prayers. So what is excluded from our statement, what the legislator has ordered, is whatever is forbidden, disliked, and permissible. And what is also excluded from our statement, not by way of obligation, is that which is wajib. So when something is mandub, the doer is rewarded for carrying out the action and not punished for leaving it. It is also called sunnah, masnoon, mustahab, and nafl. Thirdly, muharram linguistically means forbidden, and technically it means what was forbidden by the legislator as an obligation to avoid, such as disobedience to parents. So what is excluded from our statement, forbidden by the legislator, is wajib, mandub, and mubah, permissible. And what is also excluded from our statement, an obligation to avoid, is that which is disliked. So when something is muharram, forbidden, it means the one who leaves it is rewarded and the one who commits it deserves to be punished. It is also known as mahdhur and mamnu'. Fourthly, makruh linguistically means something hated, and technically it means what is forbidden by the legislator, not by way of it being obligated to abandon, such as taking and giving with the left hand. So what is excluded from our statement, forbidden by the legislator, is wajib, mandub, and mubah. And what is also excluded from our statement, not by way of obligation, is that which is muharram, forbidden. And when something is makruh, then the one who leaves it out of compliance of the legislation is rewarded, but the one who does the action is not punished. Fifthly, mubah linguistically means something declared or permitted to do, and technically it means what is not connected with a command and not something prohibited in and of itself, like eating during the nights of Ramadan. So what is excluded from our statement, what is not connected with the command, is that which is wajib and mandub, recommended. And what is also excluded from our statement, not something prohibited, is whatever is muharram, forbidden, and makruh, disliked. And what is not included by the saying in and of itself is anything which is connected to a command, therefore being a medium, which would then itself be a command or something forbidden, would also act as a medium to something which would also be forbidden, and that would not take it out of the original state of mubah, permissible. And something is mubah, permissible, as long as the description is one of permissibility, then it will not result in reward or punishment. And it is also called halal or jaiz. Rulings of wada'iyah. The rulings of wada'iyah are that which the legislator has placed signs for to prove its validity or absence of, or implementation or cancellation, and from which is valid, sahih, or invalid, fasid. Firstly, sahih linguistically means something free of disease, and technically it means the effects resulting from an act of worship or a contract. So sahih, valid acts of worship, are acts that fulfill the responsibility by meeting the requirements. And what is sahih, valid, regarding contracts is that the effects of it are directly affected by its existence, such as the relationship between property and the contract of sale, for example. So nothing can be valid until it meets the necessary conditions and is free of any obstacles preventing it from being valid. For example, part of worship is to perform the prayers on time, fulfilling all conditions, pillars, and obligatory steps. And an example of contracts is to have a contract of sale fulfilling all the known conditions without anything that would stop it from being a valid contract. So if one of these conditions is not present, or an impediment is present, it prevents it from being valid. An example of that is the condition of worship, to pray without purification. And an example of that in contracts is the absence of a requirement in the contract, such as selling that which one does not have. An example of the presence of an impediment in worship is to offer supererogatory prayers at a time of prohibition. And an example of the presence of an impediment in contracts is to sell something during Friday prayer after the second call in a way that is not permissible. Secondly, fasid linguistically means something that has been lost or is at loss. And technically, it means the effects that do not result from an act of worship or a contract. Therefore, the fasid invalid acts of worship are those that do not fulfill the obligation, so the demand is not met, such as praying before the correct time, and fasid invalid contracts are those that have no effect, such as selling something unknown. All corrupt acts of worship contracts and conditions are haram, forbidden, because that is transgressing the limits of Allah and taking his verses as a mockery, because the Prophet ﷺ forbade stipulating conditions that are not in the Book of Allah. Fasid, invalid, and batil, false, have the same meaning except in two instances. Firstly, in ihram. Fasid is what the person in ihram treads on while in ihram before the first constraints of ihram are lifted, and batil, falsehood, if he denounces Islam while doing it. Secondly, in marriage. Fasid is whatever the scholars differed in as being corrupt or not, such as marriage without a guardian, and batil is that which is what has been unanimously agreed upon, such as the false nature of marriage of a widow or a divorced woman in her waiting period. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.